now I'm going to do something with my life. How do you get to that? How do you do that? You've started your life with a beautiful childhood, beautiful teenagership, and then it all goes to hell. You get pregnant, you get married and divorced, then get married and divorced again, and then you get stage 4 colon cancer, which leads to multiple difficult and painful treatments. How do you set up your life? How do you create resilience? How do you do all that so that you can stand up for your worth?
Welcome to eSHAIR.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. eSHAIR.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning eSHAIR.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to eShare. Here we discuss, promote, and share the benefits to all from living in an egalitarian society, including men. Inaccurate propaganda leads some men to believe that they miss out with equality. The reality, suppressing women is detrimental to men. Creating a world where everyone can contribute equally makes everyone better off. Now, today it's my great pleasure to welcome Karey Spransy. Karey survived stage 4 cancer after 5 surgeries, 4 rounds of chemo, and 25 radiation treatments, plus other treatments as well. She's been a single mum, lost 2 loved ones to suicide, and had 2 divorces. Despite all that, she learned the power of gratitude. Now Karey helps others with her program Zero Fucks Given Manifesto, 7 mantras for designing a life you love without caring what anyone thinks. Welcome, Karey.
Hi, thank you so much, Damian, for having me. It's exciting to talk to you.
No, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. And for the audience, we were having a bit of a fun conversation just before, and we're talking about a number of things we're going to go on the show. But what I really want to do first, what I want to start with, can you jump in the DeLorean, the time machine from Back to the Future, hit 88 miles an hour and take us back to times in your past that have impacted you and led you to what challenges that you overcome that led you to what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's so fun. You used that analogy, the DeLorean. I think last week or the week before, posted a picture of me circa 1987 of me standing next to the DeLorean at Universal Studios. Yeah, one of my most favorite movies. That's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm, as your audience can hear from our 2 accents, I am American. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah, which is the home of the Mormons, the LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. And I grew up there in Utah, camping and skiing, and in indeed a Mormon household. And it was honestly a beautiful, magical, for as much as anything can be, perfect childhood. I really look back at my childhood and find it to be really magical. But despite that happening, right, we're all humans and we all have our stuff. And I found myself really kind of seeking for like approval and worthiness from outside, as a young teenager, you want to be, puberty starts hitting, and you start thinking that boys are cute instead of having cooties, and you start to explore all of those things. And Salt Lake City is at the time, not super diverse. And so one of my best girlfriends was this gorgeous, stunning South Islander, Samoa, I think, Polynesian background. She just absolutely beautiful, and inside and out.
Yeah.
In addition to that, just that being who she is, of course, in this not very diverse Utah, she was quite unique, right?
Yeah.
Quite the stunner in all the ways. And I just found the attention, I would get a lot of attention, but then ultimately it would go to asking questions about my friend, right? So does she like me? Does she have a boyfriend? Has someone asked her to the dance, right? So I just sort of like these interactions kind of taught me that I'm not the cute, the pretty, the desirable one. I'm the fun, goofy, best friend one that helps you meet the cute, hot girl, right? Like this was the story that I was making up in my mind. And it's important to note because those like beliefs that we have about ourselves, whether we're aware of them or not, they do guide and direct our lives. And so now looking back, I can kind of connect those dots and see, oh, that is what was going on. But then I didn't know. I just, like, ooh, looking for that attention.
Yeah.
Which leads to me and getting pregnant with my high school boyfriend at 17. So in my senior year of high school, I wind up pregnant.
You got pregnant to get attention.
Well, I didn't get pregnant to get attention. I at least not consciously, but I got with the boyfriend.
Oh, okay.
Because it made me feel worthy. I thought he was crazy hot, oh my God, he's like the most handsome, and oh my gosh, he likes me, right? And so I had a boyfriend.
Yeah.
We got together, and to be honest, again, being raised in this Mormon religious household, like, as things start getting hot and heavy, he's asking, let's have sex. And I'm, no, I don't do that. You do that when you're married. No, I'm a good girl. And then finally, he breaks me down, and I'm like, okay, yes. And then it's awesome because sex is awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Then, now we're like teenage kids who've discovered how incredible sex is, and now we can't kind of get enough, and then I end up getting pregnant, which that was not my path, right? So at least not the path I had in my mind. So when we find out, like I mentioned, this is the senior year of high school for me, and I had been playing sports all through school, so I had colleges and universities scouting me to go play for them, offering me scholarships.
Wow.
I had my grandmother was a teacher, and every year she would take students on these tours through Europe. So she, for my senior graduation, was going to take me on this whole big tour through Greece. And now here I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And I have to quit all the teams. I have to tell my grandmother I can't go. I have to tell my parents.
How did that go? How did you tell, your parents and grandparents?
God, it was so scary. It was so scary. And listen, my boyfriend and I, we're 17, and this is 1993.
Yeah.
I'm like,
and you're in Salt Lake City.
And we're in Utah, right?
Oh, sorry.
Like, Salt Lake City, Utah. You're correct. Yeah. And I'm just
it's the whitest state, isn't it?
It's what?
I've a couple of comedy shows I listened to refer to it as the whitest state.
It's pretty white. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty white.
And straight.
Isn't that
where Dry Bar is?
Straight.
There's a
There
dry
is a
bar
dry bar there.
Dry bar comedy bar is there where you have comedy without alcohol.
Well, there is a now I live in Amsterdam at the current moment, so I haven't lived in Salt Lake City for about 5 years. There very well could be that. I do know that there's a bar there called Dry Spell, which is an alcohol-free bar.
Yeah.
They might have comedy there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm moving back in March, so stay tuned. I'll get back to you, and I'll snap a pic and be like, hey, I'm here at the
awesome.
the Dry Spell.
They have really great
whatever.
comedians, and they have a thing where no one drinks and they don't swear or anything like that there as well. And I'm pretty sure it's in Utah. But
could be. It very well could be. It probably is down in Provo.
That's it. That's where it is.
Okay, yeah. So Provo is where BYU, Brigham Young University, which is the Mormon
Yeah,
university. It's a private university funded by the LDS Church.
yeah,
Um, so Provo is very white and very Mormon, and it would not surprise me at all that they have a no alcohol, no swearing comedy bar there.
yeah. And
And
it's
and I
really
bet they're
funny.
pretty funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
extremely
listen,
funny.
Jim Gaffigan is one of my favorite comedians, and he doesn't drink, and I don't think he drinks. I think he said that in some of his bits,
Mm,
and he never swears, and he's absolutely
yeah.
hilarious. So it's possible.
Anyway,
There you
we're on a
go,
side
Franny.
tangent, but yeah, well, there's a lot of great
That's
comedians that
okay.
go there that just clean up their act to actually perform there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really, which is like you say, it can
That's,
be. Yeah. Anyway, I'm distracting you. Sorry,
you're
you're
totally fine.
we're still in the DeLorean, and
Oh, we still.
yeah, and you've got pregnant, and you've got to tell your mum and dad and your grandmother, who obviously sounds like she was very influential in your life as well. How did that go down?
Yeah, she was. She was. Well, it went down different than I thought it was going to be.
Mm.
We got the news that we were pregnant because we skipped school and went to Planned Parenthood.
Oh wow!
And we skipped school and I went into Planned Parenthood and was like, I think I'm pregnant. So they gave me the pregnancy test and all of that, and they came out
Yeah.
and they were like, yes, you are. And I was like, okay. And they gave me pamphlets about like adoption and young parent motherhood and health insurance options and like how to
Mm.
well baby care, like at 3 months this checkup and at 6 months this checkup and
Yeah.
all of that kind of information. And
Yeah.
I went out into the parking lot and I lost my mind. I freaked out. Like I was screaming, I was crying. I was like, this was not my life. This is not the path. This isn't what I wanted. And like, and it was
Mm.
actually my boyfriend that like calmed me down and said, hey, like, take a breath. We love each other. It's going to be okay. We're going to work this out.
That's really cool that he was really supportive of that, because I know people where the opposite has happened. The guys just disappeared.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It was really cool. It was really cool. And it was different than, it wasn't what I expected from him.
Mm.
Um, I, I
You
guess
probably
I don't
hadn't really
know.
thought about it either, though, because I don't
No,
imagine when you were thinking about it, when you were, teenagers, you're having fun. You weren't really thinking about, oh, this could happen.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. We weren't thinking about it at all. It was just, no, we weren't thinking about that at all. And so, okay, so then like now I know I've got to tell my parents, obviously,
Mm.
and I've got to tell my grandmother, and I'm terrified because my parents are
Mm.
only 19 years older than me. So they
Um,
got pregnant outside of marriage as well when they
well,
were
they can't really get mad at you then,
eight.
can they?
Well, yes, that's what I was thinking, right? But still, they're still your parents, right?
Yeah,
And I
correct.
mean,
Yeah.
like, how many commercials and things is it's like, don't do what I say, not what I do. Like, do what
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, not, I've kind of
Yeah.
learned
I
the
didn't go
hard
to
way.
school,
So
but you
listen,
must go to school.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's funny because we end up going to California, which is where I was actually born and where like my grandparents live, and it's Thanksgiving time. And
Mm.
well, before I tell that story, so going back to my parents, my mom had told me that her mother, which was the grandmother I needed to tell that was
Yeah.
taking me on the trip, that her mother had treated her really unkindly when she came to her with the news
Oh, really?
that she and my dad were pregnant with me. And
Mm.
my parents got married. They are still together this year. They'll celebrate 47
Wow.
years married.
That's cool.
So they're madly in love. They can't keep their hands off of each other. It's really amazing. And it's a lot of pressure to find that type of long lasting connection. But
we'll come to their secret later, I think.
I think we'll come to their secret later. Yeah. But like when they got married, my grandmother made my mom wear a blue ribbon on her wedding dress because she wasn't allowed to be in a totally white dress because she wasn't pure. And like there were some traumatic things that had happened that I had heard about growing up as a kid, right?
Yeah.
So now I've got to tell this grandmother and my parents, and I'm just terrified. I'm just terrified.
Yeah.
I'm also the oldest child, and so for all the other oldest kids out there listening, there's sort of this unspoken pressure to be perfect, to like be the star kid and be perfect and do, because you're the one doing it first for every single time, no matter what it is. Like I'm the one doing it first generally. So anyways, there was just all of that. And
Were
on
you
the
leading the
last
way
day
going, okay, we're all going to get pregnant at 17? Is that?
well, and yeah, like, oh, this is what's going to happen. Like, I screwed it up. I fucked it up, really, is kind of what I thought. Like the minute it happened, I was like, oh my God, I've totally fucked it up. I've had this beautiful childhood. My parents have supported me, loved me. Like, no, like it's been great. And now here I am, like having to get rid of all my scholarships, quit the teams, not go on this trip, which I thought for sure I was going to meet my Greek god who was going to rescue me forever on this holiday. I was positive of it, and like just the whole path that I had laid out in my mind, I just lit on fire in one moment.
Yeah.
And I felt really lost and like I had completely ruined my life. And what in the world was I going to do? And I was just terrified of everything.
Yeah.
Probably my parents' reaction, the least terrifying thing, because I knew they loved me and that they would help and support me, and that would be okay. But it was everything else. I still was scared to tell them, because you never want to admit, like, it's so hard to admit that you fucked it up, even if you hurt someone's feelings, and it's not as sort of permanent, maybe, as like bringing a child into the world. Like, it's always hard to go back and say,
no,
hey.
I mean, I relate to that completely. The hardest thing I have ever done in my life was ask my dad for help. That was the hardest thing I ever had to do. And as you're saying, it comes back to that point of admitting, hey, the reason I had to ask him for help is that I fucked it up. I got I screwed up my finances monumentally. I had no way out, and he was the only person I could turn to that could actually help. Really humbling experience to go there and say, hey, Dad, I fucked it up. And it was more about, and it sounds like you having that similar sort of thing where you let them down. It was, it wasn't so much, I'd messed up many times. It wasn't the first time, but this is the first time I messed up in such a way that I had to ask my dad for help. And it was, turning to him and going, well, all this advice and help and guidance that you've given me, I just didn't take it on board, because I know you tried to advise me not to do this stuff, and I've done it anyway. So was that similar for you, like with your parents, when you went to tell them? I mean, obviously you had that same experience you're telling about, how you felt difficult to tell them, but what was their reaction like?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. Exactly. It just like, I didn't take any advice you said. You said, be home by midnight, and I would be late, or I would come home and then sneak right out the window and go back out. Like, I didn't listen to anything you said, and look where it's landed me. And I'm an asshole, and I should have listened. Right. Like, well, Irish walked into their room. Literally, we were leaving the next day. We had already been there almost 2 weeks, I think, and I had not found the courage to say anything. And we were leaving the next day, and I was like, hey, it's now or never.
Yeah.
So I walked into their room. They were still lying in bed, and I sat on the bed and I said, Mom and Dad, I'm pregnant. And they were quiet for a minute. I think, knowing my parents, I think they probably knew already and were just waiting. Like most of us parents
do that, isn't it?
We do. We get these like spidey senses, and then we're just like, well,
we've done it before.
Let's see.
We knew we were kids once. We forget that our parents were kids once.
Totally. And there are signs, despite how clever we think we're being, hiding the signs. Like, well, I think that was the case. They've not said so per se, but I think that was indeed the case. And
well, you never let them know either, as you know, as a parent, even if you didn't know, and they think you never let on.
Of course. That's exactly right. Yeah, they just were like, well, what are you gonna do? That's what their answer was. Well, what are you gonna do? And I break down. I don't know what to do. I was like hysterical sobbing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 17. I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
what to do.
It's such a big
And
thing.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I was like, adoption. I mentioned abortion, and my mom and dad were like, well, are you in love? Do you love him? And I was like, yes, I do.
Mm.
They were like, well, what about getting married and keeping it? Because this was their experience, right? Like, here they are married
Yeah.
with 4 kids.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, that's also an option that does work sometimes. I mean, like, look at us, right? Like,
Yeah.
all of these are viable options.
We're still together in the same bed, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So they listened to me kind of say like what I was thinking, the thoughts that were, and then they were like, okay, and another option is also that you do, like, you make a family.
Mm.
It can happen. Look at the family you're in, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I just was like, I didn't even think that was an option because I'm 17.
Yeah.
You know, I just was like, I didn't. Long story long, as I heard Jimmy Fallon say today. Long story long. We end up getting married over Christmas break of our senior year.
Yeah.
And I moved out of my parents' house into an apartment with my now husband,
Yeah.
which was the basement apartment of his father's home.
Mm.
And like 1st of June, I walk in my cap and gown, and at the end of June, I have my son.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy. I remember, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months into it, being at my parents' house, just crying, being like, oh my God, being an adult is so hard. It's so much responsibility. And your mom and the laundry and the cooking all the time and bills. And I hate it. And I'm sorry I was such a jerk and I never listened to you guys. And I remember my dad just sitting there, leaning back in the chair with a smile. And he just says, I've been waiting so long to hear that. And then he was like, no, I know, sweetheart, it is hard. It's a lot of work, but it's so worth it. I mean, just you're doing great. We're here to support you. Like, just take a breath. It's going to be okay. And yeah, it's difficult. It's hard, but you know, this is the hard work that's so worth it. There's a lot of stuff that's hard to do that's not worth it.
Yes.
And this being a mom and showing up and raising a family with love, that's hard work that's worth it.
Yeah. I completely agree. As a dad myself, it's nothing compares to that. And I don't relate to, because I didn't have children until much later, which make it a little bit easier when you've got money behind you and you can do the things you want to do and stuff like that. But I can't. You wouldn't change any of that. I don't know any parent that would change that. And so, how did you do that? How did you manage that? Because you talked about that a bit on your website. I was reading that. That was really difficult. And obviously, you said 2 months in, you've gone, oh my God, I've got to do all this, and it's a lot of hard work. How did you balance it all? How did you find the way to make it all work?
Oh, that is such a good question. You know, I get asked that question a lot, and I've sat and thought about it a lot. And I think, I mean, first, the big answer is I had a lot of help and support from my parents, as I've said. And I have 3 siblings, so 2 sisters and a brother younger than me, and I was 17, so they were even younger. So I had some sort of built-in babysitters who were all about wanting to do it, right? Which was great. So I did have, luckily, the support of my family, and frankly, the support of my community, right? That one of the things that I think is really wonderful about the Mormon religion, and I'm sure a lot of religions are like this, but my experience is the Mormon religion, right?
Yeah.
Is that it really is sort of love thy neighbor, take care of your communities, do service. And so when I found myself right before my son turned 3, divorced for the first time, just before I was 21. Again, like, what in the actual fuck is happening? This is not, again, not the path I had laid out. My parents
What
are
happened
together
there?
still.
What I mean, because you're obviously very much in love. I mean, the fact that I said he stayed and was actually really supportive from
Yeah.
the very beginning is not. I don't think that's common, or maybe it
No.
is. Maybe, but I know from some close friends and family where that experience didn't happen. They you know,
Hmm.
in particular, I mean, my sister has 4 children, 2 different dads who pissed off. Um,
Yeah.
and one pissed off and come back. Then she had twins, so that's why she's got 4 children.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
yeah, and it's like so she's raised
Yeah.
them all by herself. So and
Yeah.
maybe my perception is a little bit biased or skewed by that, but and maybe that's
Sure.
what I notice. But the fact that so your boyfriend at the time, you found out you're pregnant. He's like, yeah, let's we love each other.
Yeah.
If I heard that
Yeah.
correctly, he
Yeah.
said to you, we love each other. We can
Yeah.
make this work. So
Hmm.
and you've done that. But then what happened? What went downhill from there?
Well, yeah. So I think if I'm honest, Damien, had we not gotten pregnant, we
Mm,
probably would have. We not probably. We absolutely would have broken up,
yeah.
and our relationship would have ended once we graduated from high school. I would have gone off to college.
Hmm.
I don't know honestly what he would have done.
Mm,
And looking back now with the hindsight is 2020 and with 47 years of life experience behind me,
mm.
I can look back and see that from the beginning we were not compatible.
Yeah.
I thought he was the hottest thing I had ever seen in my entire life. So handsome. Johnny Depp, 21 Jump Street. Like, oh my gosh, stop my beating
The
heart. He
millennials are going,
was
"What?
just,
What's 21 Jump Street?" But I
I
get
know, the young
it.
ones.
I
But
get it.
but our age people will know
80s
exactly.
rock. I'm
And
an 80s kid, so I'm 50.
absolutely.
So, you know.
And listen, any listener who's like Johnny Depp, 21 Jump Street, Google it and then you'll see what I'm talking about. But like it just
Even I'm hot for
um
Johnny Depp in 21 Jump Street.
yeah, I mean, come on. I think everybody, like women wanted to date him, guys wanted to be him, maybe.
Exactly.
Or guys wanted to date him.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, like I grew up in a very stable,
Mm,
kind, loving, unconditional, supportive family and
mm,
household. And
yeah.
he grew up in a very dysfunctional, abusive mentally and physically,
Mm.
drug addicted,
Okay.
like not support, like really tough
Mm,
childhood.
yeah.
And at 17, I thought, well, our love will change him, like we live in a Disney movie. Like my love will change him and he'll experience my family and the other side, another way that life can be, and it'll
Mm,
change and it'll be wonderful, and like not I, but like I'll pull him out of the mud and we'll
mm,
walk off into the sunset like
mm,
my parents have done, right?
yeah.
That's what I thought. That's
Yeah.
literally what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
Um, and when he was happy and in a good space and felt like he was worthy of this beautiful family and life that we
Mm,
had, it was wonderful. But
mm,
those moments were really few and far between.
yeah.
And the in between times
Mm,
was yelling, dishes flying,
yeah.
unkind, like really, really damaging to my self-esteem.
Yeah.
Connecting it back to that beautiful friend of mine who
Mm,
those interactions and those formative years just shaped the belief in me that I am not a beautiful, desirable
mm,
person.
yeah.
And then now I'm married.
Yeah.
Not only am I 17 and my body has gone through this, like what in the hell? And
Mm,
now I'm having to just deal with like the physical stuff. But then I have a husband who is reminding me about all the imperfections of
mm,
my 17-year-old body because he's 17 as well. Like, so
yeah.
in fairness to him, like
Yeah, but he
he's
hasn't had to
doing the best
carry
he
a
can.
baby.
No, he hasn't, right? And so like
But
just a lot of damage done to my self-esteem. And
yeah.
I remember him and I having a particularly um loud and violent for me. He never hit me, at least, you know, by that time he's never hit me. I'll just, because he never has.
Yeah.
He's never hit me, but the fight was escalating to the point where, like, I was afraid it might happen.
Yeah.
And he chased me up the stairs to the bedroom. And as I go running into our bedroom, my son's bedroom is there and he's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I slam the door behind me and I just like have this moment of, no, I am done. Absolutely not. Because the thought came to me, you in this moment right now are teaching your son what marriage looks like, what male and female relationships look like, what respect looks like, what love. And is this the picture you want to paint for him?
Yeah.
Because this is the picture he's going to hold up when he goes and looks for his love in his life.
That's pretty insightful, though, at that age, that you had that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're talking about before, because now you're looking back and going, okay, at, in hindsight, that was always there. And I have a saying that, no amount of skill fixes a poor partner choice. And that's not to say that one person is bad. It's just if you don't connect to each other, if there's no amount of, no matter what you're going to do is going to change that. And the other point someone said to me once is, when you first meet each other, that's the best you're going to get. A lot of people they go, oh, I hope the person will change. But when you first meet, that's the best you're going to get. It goes downhill from there. And if you're not starting from a high plane, you're in trouble. So it's interesting that you had that awareness to go, okay, that early, because you only been married a couple of years, 3 years, you said, and then you realized, hey, this is not the example that I want for your son. So. What was that like? I mean, how did you then make that step? Because obviously you'd have to go and tell your parents again.
Oh, my poor parents. The amount of news I have had to share with my parents, they deserve a medal. Yeah, I mean, in that moment, right? Like in that moment, it was very insightful to have that like moment of clarity at that age and in that moment. But I think those happen. Yeah. And it's wonderful when we can grab them when they happen, right? Because I don't think, I mean, because I've done plenty of not very insightful, bright things in my life since that moment. But that was that was a good one, right?
What do you think was going on at that time, though? Because, I mean, I really like to get into that, because that's something that I play with a lot, is to try and pay attention to that insight. And I think I've got pretty good at it with a lot of things I'm doing, where it feels like gut feeling, but I don't think it is. I think it's more than that. And so I was just wondering what was going on for you at that moment that gave you that insight, that this aha. Other people I've talked to have described it as a knowing inside, but really couldn't put a physical description around it, or they couldn't describe it more than that knowing. But what was it like for you? Was there something more than that? Because it's something I'm trying to understand.
I think, it's a good question. And I think for me, it goes back to for this particular scenario, in this instance, that I had such an incredible example from my parents of what was possible, that it was so very clear that the life and the family and the relationship that I was in didn't have to be that way. Yeah. Like I knew and saw and experienced and had around me all the time an example of another way it could be.
Yeah. Was it a case that what you went through that day was more extreme than what you had before? Because it sounds like that you didn't always have it, as you said before, when you had these wonderful moments, they were wonderful, but that was rare. But was this more extreme than what had happened before? Were you running up the stairs and then had the trigger of going into your son's room? Was that?
I think so. Yeah. And I think there's kind of just like small things. So yes, this had been building. So I
Mm-hmm.
think this was more extreme, more loud. I think a dish came flying across the room at one point during this fight. I remember
Yeah.
as I went to turn the corner, I grabbed the hand railing, and he tried to like grab my wrist and
Yeah.
just caught my finger, and it broke my finger. I don't
Wow.
think he didn't. I don't believe that he meant to break it and
Yeah.
hurt me in that way. I do think that that was an accident, but that like in the
Yeah.
context of everything that was happening, now I'm just like, oh, having my parents as an example to just be
Yeah.
like, because I think had I grown up in a household where my parents bickered and fought and told each other to shut up and weren't kind with one another, and that
Mm.
they told us kids to shut up, and that like our thoughts and opinions didn't matter. Like if I had grown up in that, I probably would have been like, well, this is just how this is, and I maybe would have stayed for a lot longer. But
Yeah.
I never still, after I'm going to be 47 in 2 weeks, and I never have heard my parents tell each other shut up.
Yeah.
I've never heard them treat one another with disrespect. They don't always agree on everything.
Yeah.
They do argue,
Mm.
but they argue as respectful adults.
Yeah.
There's never below the belts. There's never words said purely to
Yeah.
hurt you or to like one up the other. And I think that was the thing for me, is that I knew it didn't have to be this way because I
Mm.
had a very clear example of it. So
Yeah.
I just said, okay, enough's enough. I don't have to stay here and make this. I
Yeah.
don't have to stay here and be treated like this.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, so just I said, I'm just
yeah,
really wanting, because I think these moments of clarity and knowing, and that's another context to adding to that, is throwing in that component of you had a different framework, a very different framework
mhm,
to what you were experiencing,
yeah,
and hence as you said, you were hoping that you could mold. Mold's not the right word, but hoping that with the right example, he would come to that awareness that there is this option. But then you've got to
mhm,
the stage where it's just got to the point, and very quickly, I think 3 years is relatively quickly for that to be aware of. Gone, okay, this is not right anymore, and you've
mhm,
obviously got a lot of love for your son, which is something, is a
mhm,
trigger as well. So I was just trying to understand what this knowing is that
yeah,
people have, and what makes people give this awareness that, okay, I've got to do something very different, which is, divorce is quite extreme,
yeah.
and now you've got to tell your parents again. So
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, in that moment, I can't say that in that moment I was like, that's it, we're getting divorced. But I was
mm,
like, I'm leaving.
yeah,
This is not okay. We
okay,
need,
yeah,
we need help. We need something,
yeah,
right? So I got my son and I said, my son and I are going to my parents. I am not doing this
mm,
anymore.
yeah,
And I went to my parents and I showed up and I cried and I was like, this is what's happened. This is what's been going on. And my parents had seen, you
yeah.
know,
They know,
the
yeah,
stuff leading up. And it, I think we didn't get officially divorced for a whole nother year,
mm,
but we stayed separated and
okay,
tried to do some counseling,
mhm,
but you have to be open to that.
yeah,
And he wasn't.
yeah,
Um, when it got close to the end, and yeah, it was just really messy and it was really hurtful and damaging. A lot of like, I hate you and we're gonna get divorced and why did we ever get together, and then like, oh but I miss you, and like makeup sex, and
yeah.
just like,
It's a funny
also we
cycle
are
you go through, isn't it?
20. It's such a roller coaster ride. It's such a mind fuck to get divorced, and there's just that untangling of the emotions and the story and the future you've had mapped out, and the uncoupling of the hearts and the things, but also now all the stuff you make it mean about being young and a single mother, and now I'm divorced, and like in society, and particularly almost all religious societies, like You don't have sex before you're married, and marriage is forever, and you stick it out. And like I had like done all of those things backwards.
Mm.
And I'm
How did
20, and I'm freaking 20, you know?
so how
Like,
did you cope with that? I mean, like with all that pressure, you've got, I said, you've pretty much done, as you say, the key things you've done wrong, done the opposite way around. How did you
yeah.
personally cope with that? How did you, when you're alone at night, sort of thinking about it and processing it, what were your thoughts, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, at the time I didn't deal with it super well, I have to be honest, because shortly after my husband and I separated,
Mm.
about 6 months after we separated, maybe even just before that, I found out that he and my first cousin were now dating together. They were together. She was like a sister to me. She's my age, and she was
Yeah.
actually one of my bridesmaids in our wedding. And now they're together. They ended up getting married and having 3 kids, which that is a story for another episode, or maybe later today. We'll see if the story winds its way there. But
Did they know
that,
each other? I mean, they obviously knew each other when you were married. Was there
yeah,
any indication? I mean, that was did it start before or after you broke up? Just out of curiosity.
not that I picked up on,
Yeah.
not that I saw or picked up on.
Mm.
She lived in California. We were living in Utah. So it's not like
Okay.
they saw each other all of the time.
Yeah.
How it even started, I don't even know. And when I first found out, I was like, I think my son came home from a weekend at dad's and I was asking, how was the weekend? And he was like, oh yeah, it was great. I'll change her name just for, privacy purposes. But oh, it was great. Katie was there, and Katie this, and Katie that, and then I was like, Katie, the only Katie that I think we know is my Katie. And I can't remember if I showed my son a picture and I was like, this Katie, or if I called up his dad and was like, is Katie there? I
Mm.
can't remember which way it went down, but one of those 2 ways, I discovered that it was in fact my Katie.
Yeah. Or was it a case of you saw the photo and rang out and went, "Why the fuck, Katie? Yeah, what the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, totally. To both of them.
Yeah.
Called up her and him and like, oh my God, that was a messy year, a super messy, painful year that I did not handle well. I drank a lot
Yeah.
and I exercised my face off. And I'm one of those people that when I get
You
stressed
exercised
and
your
worried,
face off.
I
Yeah.
don't eat. And
Okay.
I need to get that energy. So I hike, I cycle, I run. Like I was the
Alright.
star of my kickboxing class. I remember the teacher being like,
Remind me never to
keep
piss
it
you off.
pushing. Well, I don't know that I'm good at, but it just was like, like had to get it out some way so that I wouldn't,
Yeah.
do it to them,
Yeah.
use them as the punching bag. But, and at one point during all of that, my son and I were living at my parents. And I do remember my dad coming in one day,
Mm.
to the kitchen. And I was sitting at the kitchen table. I think I'd just come back from a run or a workout or something. I don't even know. Or maybe, no, actually, I think it was the morning. I had been out all night.
Mm.
And now it's the next morning, Saturday morning or whatever, Sunday morning or whatever. And I'm sitting at the table and I'm hungover and my dad's he's had it. He's had it with this
Yeah.
behavior. And he sits down and he's like, I've had it. This is not okay. What you're doing to yourself is not okay. And
Yeah.
you are going to start taking care of yourself and eating real food and quitting the drinking and going to bed at a decent hour and being here
Mm.
for your son. God damn it. Or I'm going to sit on you and shove the food down your face. Like I love you. And I am not going to sit here and watch you and let you do this to yourself. It's
Mm.
not okay. I know you hurt, honey.
Yeah.
I know that this is not anything that you wanted and that this is absolutely terrible. And you
Yeah.
don't deserve this and your son doesn't deserve this.
Was that the trigger for you where you said you don't deserve this, but and your son doesn't deserve this? Was that a drive? Because that was a driving factor of leaving the house.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it was. I mean, I don't know if that was again, divine intervention of my dad just getting like the universe like say these words, or if this was, I have no idea, but it was what I needed to hear, because it was the snap of like, oh, right, I left because my son doesn't deserve this. He deserves a better picture of love and all of that. And now look at, and then what picture are you painting here about like self-care and self-love and worthiness and all of that? Okay, so time to snap out of it. And it did snap me out of it. So then it was boundaries around my time, about her coming to pick up the son. Like, hey, it's fine that you guys are together.
Yeah.
And actually, you are going to get a new girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I suppose if there's anyone on the planet,
yeah,
I would much rather my son go there when I know she's there, because I know her. I've known her my whole life.
Yeah.
You could pick some random girl that I don't know who's mean and abusive to my son, and that's not going to be okay.
Yeah.
But I actually feel more comfortable knowing that she's there when my son goes over to your house for the weekend than if it were you alone or you with some random woman. So like take my hurt out of it.
Yeah.
Take my hurt out of it. And what really is best for Riley, my son.
Yeah.
And it's actually her of all the women that he could choose to be with, because she's wonderful. I loved her. I love her. She's she's a cousin of mine. She's in my life today, right? Like, I loved Katie. I knew Katie. I knew that my son would be well cared for, well taken care of. She was funny and fun and calm and kind, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. I actually went back to the Mormon church for a little while, thinking that was something that I needed. It ultimately is not something that I needed, but at the time it was. I learned a lot about myself. It helped me, I think, get better at listening to what I call my intuition. Many, Mormons would call it the Holy Ghost or the Spirit. I frankly don't care what you call it, but it's like listening to those messages, internal or external, that are there to guide your life. It taught me how to do that better.
So is that where you had, because you spent you talked a bit about, from these teenager years, lacking, you've noticed that you talk about confidence and confidence in yourself, which then was exacerbated by, by your first husband, who, wasn't very supportive of you, and you, that sort of, you felt that. Then after you've broken up, you've gone into what sounds like a self-loathing period where you've just, expressed all this through that. Was that when you started, when you actually resolved this self-worth issues, if for want of a better way of putting it, or was it that just a stepping stone, because you went on and you said you married, or 2 divorces, so there's another divorce to come yet?
There is.
So was that the case? Did you, from there, your dad's had the words to you, you've taken some time to reconcile things out. What was that like? Was that journey where you actually started to see the light, or was it still a bit of a roller coaster to go on?
Well, I think the answer is yes to both of those things. In that, I think I don't know that we ever fully, totally, and completely resolve those things. Like, is my self-worth healed? I think it's healed. I think my self-worth is very strong. I know that I'm worthy, and still things pop up in life where you're like, ooh, I'm, what do I think? I mean, your self-saboteur pops up all the time. Here I am running a business, a life coach, helping people to be resilient. And I know I'm a good coach. I know from the results of my clients, from what people tell me, and from my own life, that I know how to be resilient. I know how to turn this bullshit that happens in our lives into our strengths. And yet, I have this voice sometimes. It's like, what are you doing? Who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing, trying to change the world? Right? And I think what happens is that I have become better at being, thanks for sharing. I'm not listening to you. I'm doing it anyways, and moving on, or picking having the cry and then going at it, feeling the disappointment, and then trying again, right? Instead of back in those early days, feeling that disappointment and letting it shatter me. It doesn't shatter me anymore.
Yeah.
I get a little ding, a little dent, but like, like we just pop that dent back out and it's okay, right? Like
So is that where that started, from your dad's, I'm going to sit on you until you get it?
Yeah. I think that's what it started.
That just created all different visual images for me. I don't know which cartoons were popping into my head, but I just imagine someone.
I know, right? Like, but he, I think it was, that was for me. And I think I always knew that my parents, my dad loved me unconditionally and thought the world of me. But it was like in those, it had never needed to be demonstrated in such a way until that point.
Yeah.
There were several moments through that getting divorced where like he kind of had to give me some tough love of like, okay, I've had it enough. Now I know you're a mother yourself, and I know that you're 20 years old, but I'm dad, and enough is enough.
Yeah.
It's time to take care of yourself. Like if you can't stand up for yourself, I'm going to stand up for you. Right. Kind of a thing. And then there were a couple of other moments like through that divorce where there would be awful confrontations in the driveway, and my dad would come out and step between us and step in front of my husband and be like, now it's time for you to go, and you're going to go, or I'm going to make you go, kind of a thing. Like, you don't get to, this is my territory, and you don't get to be like this here, kind of a thing. So witnessing that, seeing him really stand up in that way, I think was the first proof, I suppose. I think we always look for proof around our limiting beliefs. And up until that point, I'd had a lot of proof that my belief of not being worthy and that I'm a total fuck up, I had a lot of evidence that was true in my life. And I think my dad was
the evidence, or you were choosing to look at just those parts that supported that?
Probably that. Yeah, I think that, right? Like, had the evidence, sure. But I mean, going back to like, I believe that all rules are made up and that there's no right way to do life. There's only your way to do life. But I know that now. But at the time, the right way to do life was you get married and then you have kids.
Yeah.
Right. And I had kids and then got married, and now that marriage was falling apart. So at that time I was like, well, I've totally done it the wrong way. So that was, well, that's clear evidence in the I'm not worthy column. Right. At the time.
Because that was the rules you had. Yeah.
Because those were the rules I was living under, right, at the time. Yeah. So at the time, so I think my dad was really,
we need that as well, not just because your dad gave you some fairly tough love there. Do you think we need that, not just with our, from an external side, but with ourselves as well, to say, hey, stop being a namby-pamby and just suck it up and get on with it? Do we need a bit of that with ourselves as well?
Totally. I think we do. I think, as helpful as looking in the mirror and having those mantras of like, I'm a good person and I'm worthy. I think sometimes we need you're a good person, goddammit, and you're worthy of more than this. So stop doing this to yourself and give yourself a talking to. I give myself a talking to on occasion. Like, hey, sister, what is happening here?
It's always good to talk with yourself because you get a good quality conversation that way. That's my thing. I like talking to myself because I get a grip.
I get the jokes. Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, but I just do wonder if we need to separate those two, because I mean we have to separate the person from the behavior. I believe both externally and with ourselves as well. I've used this example before, but I remember when I was helping out at a wedding. And my job was, being out the front, making sure everything was going well, and there was a parking spot there for the bridal car to turn up and stuff like that. And someone parked there, so I've stomped over as the guy and his girlfriend or wife or whoever was walking out from where they parked the car. They didn't know that there was nothing there to say this is the bride going to park there. They didn't know. But I'm walking, what the hell are you parking there for? Where's the bride going to park? And I've jumped down this guy's throat. And obviously he's upset, but he moved his car. And I look back at that, and at the time my intention was good. I'm a good person. My behavior, little bit more to me to say, could have been a lot better. And as I look back at that, I mean, if I look back and said, oh, I was a bad person, I'm immediately going to start, and I don't know what the chemicals, I know what the happy chemicals are, dopamine and serotonin and stuff like that, but I know what there's negative chemicals as well they produce. So if I actually start even saying that now, as I said now, I'm a bad person for doing that, I can feel it in my body right now that I'm producing that chemical. But I actually go, okay, I'm a good person. My intention was good. My behavior not so great, and maybe not do that again. And my body feels completely different saying that now. Right in those 20 seconds that I've said to say that, my body inside feels completely different saying both. And that's where I'm wondering: do we need to have that separation from your person, who you are, who is a wonderful being, no matter what, you're a wonderful. There's very few people, I think, that fall in the spectrum of not wonderful inside as a person. There's a few that I can think of in history that probably felt outside of that, but most people there. And if you approach it from that way and go, well, actually, that behavior, that's probably not so great, or in my case, I say that was pretty stupid. I shouldn't have done that. And next time I'll do it better. Is that a process you think we go through, and is that something that you went through as well? Did you have that experience where your dad said, "Hey, get your life together," and that fact that he stood up for you in the driveway, or just stood between you and said, "Hey, that's enough. That's not appropriate," and was that you recognizing, "Hey, I'm a worthy person. Some of this situation's not great," but distinguishing between the two?
Yeah, it was, and you're absolutely right. It has taken me all of these experiences that we've talked so far to recognize and separate and untangle the things that I've done and the things that have happened in my life from who I am. And I think it's a journey that all of us have to go on, and some of us do it sooner than others, right? My dad was a huge catalyst in being sort of the first example for me, because like we went back to the beginning, when you said that must have been terrifying to tell your parents. What was their reaction, right? I mean, their reaction was unconditional love. And then now here I am now on the brink of getting divorced, and he's doing it again. So there were two examples of like, I am still worthy, smart, kind, a good human. I have integrity. Have I made some dumb, poor choices in my life? Yes. And those poor choices have consequences. But I am not a poor choice. Keeping my son is not a poor choice. Like, I am still worthy of love and happiness and my dreams and joy and acceptance and kindness and all of that. And so that's really, the catalyst that kicked off this whole, one of the mantras that I have, these 0 fucks given mantras, is like, shitty shit happens and it's got nothing to do with me. I am still worthy of love and belonging. Getting divorced is shitty shit. And it doesn't mean that I deserved cancer after the second one. It doesn't mean that I deserve to struggle and have a hard life. It doesn't mean that I'm a jerk. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I'm unlovable. It doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It doesn't mean that I can't be happy. It means none of that. It just means we weren't a match.
Now that comes back to what I was saying before, when I really believe that statement of no amount of skill fixes a poor partner choice. That's not personal, just personal. That's in business, everywhere. You need to pay attention to that stuff. And that's not saying one is right or wrong. Just sometimes you're not a match, and there's no point trying to fix that. It's better just to look for the right person to start with when you're aware of that. I said business, personal, whatever. It's better to recognize that it's not, you are a good person. I love that you were talking about that. But did that go through? Because now let's move forward, and let's 88 miles an hour again, but move forward a little bit. I love that you love the DeLorean. I'm so we're friends for life now.
Yes, I love it. I'm like, when is Mr. Fusion? Like, electric cars? Let's get Mr. Fusion going here.
Exactly. Yeah, we want that uranium, and
Exactly.
But was that what you experienced then, or was it further developed? Because you've got married again and then got divorced again. So
Yeah.
talk us through that process. Was that a whole, everything's cool with myself, we got divorced, that's all okay, or was it still that roller coaster ride going through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little, maybe not. I think it was a bit more. It was a bit more of a roller coaster ride, maybe less extreme. I think there were a few like upside down loops, but it was still a roller coaster ride. Um, because after that, then now here I am, a single mom, and I'm like, okay, like my dad's had given me the tough love talking to, so now let's do this. Let's go get your life. So now it's okay. I can do this. I can take care of myself. I can take care of my son. I can do this. And I
Mm.
want to get myself to a point where I don't need anyone to take care of me, but I want to spend my time with someone else, right?
Yeah,
That is a difference between like needing someone to come in and rescue me
yeah,
and wanting to share my life with someone else. So
yeah.
that's where I wanted to get to. And so then I started working full time, going to school full time. It took me 10 years to get my 4-year bachelor's degree, but I did it.
It's commitment.
Sometimes it's commitment. I mean, and that was tough, but I don't know that nowadays a college education is quite the collateral or the differentiator now that it was then. But in
Mm.
1997, like you had to have a college degree to
Yeah,
get anywhere.
yeah, okay.
So it was really important to me, and it meant more than it was important to me to provide for us financially, but it was important to me because prior to getting pregnant,
Mm.
I was going to go to college on a sports scholarship, and I wanted to be a marine biologist. Like I college was on my path before getting pregnant.
Yeah,
So I was
okay.
like, hey,
Yeah,
well, we're going back to it. All right, let's circle. We
yeah,
just took a big detour, but let's circle back to the path and go to school and get these things and figure out what you want to do and make that happen. So um, I worked my butt off. I
mm.
would go to class in the morning. I would get up at 5 a.m., get my
Yeah,
son all ready, take him to my mom.
mm.
Then I would go to a class at the university. Then I'd go to my job all day. Then I'd go back and do 2 classes at night. Then I'd pick up my son who had been bathed and fed, thank God. And then we'd go home. I'd
Yeah,
put him in bed. I'd do a little bit of homework, laundry, whatevs. And again, the next day for like 10 years, I
yeah.
did that.
Wow.
And sometimes not always 3 classes, sometimes just 1 class because I couldn't afford it, or like I was just burnt out and needed a break or whatever.
Mm.
But we did that. Now, the fortunate thing about living in Utah is that there's so much nature right at your front door.
Yeah,
Back then, you could just go camping for free as long as it was on like state land. You could go, you didn't have to pay a fee. So I
mm.
grew up camping. So my son and I every weekend would pack up the car with the tent and we would just go and like get away and
Yeah,
camp and hike and nature and all of these kinds of things. So I really tried to love my life on my way to my dreams.
yeah,
Um, rather because also again kind of just going back to like what it was really important to me
yeah.
to give my son the best example I thought I could, like I had the best example from my parents, right?
Yeah, okay.
And meanwhile, his father is being a maniac. Like he's just all over the place, not paying child support, moving to California, moving back, not picking it up on his weekends, canceling last minute,
Mm.
like decides he's going to join the Marines. Like he is all over the place. Zero accountability or stability from him. Zero on
Yeah,
that side. So I was like, okay, he's got that example's happening and I have no control over that
mm.
example.
Yeah,
I have control over this example. So I am going to be this stability,
mm.
love, unconditional love, fun, freedom. Like we don't have a ton of money. I remember my son asking me if he could go to some like space camp or something. And me being totally honest and saying, I would love more than anything to send you to that space camp.
Mm.
We do not have that in the budget right now.
Yeah.
But I'm doing everything I can to make
Mm.
sure that we can have it in the budget someday, but right now that's not the case. But here's what we can do. We can go here, 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 here. We can look up all of these experiments and we can get the things and we can do it in the backyard. I'm sure grandpa will help and uncle, and we can have everyone come and we can like do our own little science camp here in the backyard. Would you like to do that? Yeah, let's do that. So we did that instead, right? Like, what
Mm.
happens when you
Yeah,
mix
because I was wondering how
Mentos
that.
and Coke?
Yeah, I was going
you
to say,
know?
what was that like? I mean, but it sounds like, as you were talking through that, because you were saying your son wanted to go to space camp and you didn't have the money to go to space camp. And some people would just take that on as a negative, but it sounds like you've created this positive, because just from your reaction or his reaction that you've described, where he's going, yeah, let's do that. It sounds like not only, it wasn't a negative that you couldn't go, it was like, let's find another opportunity to do something exciting together, because it's not so much about the camp, it's about the relationship we're building. Is that,
Mhm, mhm.
am I hearing that
So,
correctly?
yeah, you are hearing that correctly. And I think the reason that like that's how that went for me, I think, is again going back to my parents and what a wonderful example they were.
Mm,
Like I mentioned that they're 19 years older than I am.
yeah,
By the time my parents were 25, they had 4 kids under the age of 5.
yeah. That's a Utah
We
thing, you're going to keep warm, right?
well, yes, and they say, well, we were just young and poor and in love, and we couldn't afford cable. And I was like, geez, there's other things to do. Just because you can't go outside every now and then.
Maybe they did.
Yeah, they were like, well, we did, and I was like, oh, I don't need to know, but I'm happy for you, but no details. Like, that's fabulous, no details.
Yeah.
No, but they, I mean, I remember growing up, like they had no money. My dad
Mm,
was working as an architect and trying to finish his degree when we were kids.
mm.
And my dad would go to his job and then go to school and then come home and they'd put us to bed. And then my mom would go work as a waitress in a diner
But I just
or
want to,
go,
yeah, I really want to
yeah. And
explore. Go ahead. Yeah.
no.
Because
What's the
I
question?
really want to get to this part because the self-worth part is really interesting in the sense of
Yeah.
what you've gone through. Now you're there with
Yeah.
your son, but it
Yeah.
doesn't sound like at that point in time, even though you couldn't afford this stuff, and you're working really hard
Yeah.
and you're studying and all that, it doesn't sound like this self-worth thing kicked in then. It was like thinking you weren't worthy because you couldn't afford to go to camp. It was like, it sounds like you're a good mum and you're going to make sure he has a great example because you're a good mum. And that sounds what I was hearing from you describing that
Yeah.
point, as opposed to going where some people will go, oh, I can't afford the camp, I'm not a good parent. But you didn't, it doesn't sound like you had that then. Is that fair to say?
No, I didn't. And I think going back to what I was saying, I think it's because I didn't grow up with money to go to camp,
Yeah,
but
okay.
I always grew up with fun and freedom and love. And like
Mm,
my parents did such a good job of giving us a beautiful, fun life, even though like my mom sewed our clothes and our family vacations were camping, not cruises,
yeah,
that I had that example. So when that came up, it just was, it felt, I suppose, for me in that moment, natural. Now, I I think I just got to a point where I was like, if you look at the world and the rules and what society tells you, and statistics, which I know you're not a fan of statistics, but statistics, right?
well, Disraeli said
It,
there's 3 types of lies, damn lies, and statistics. So,
exactly. But so, and
okay,
to your
yes,
point though,
yeah.
statistics would tell you
Mm,
that if you get pregnant young as a
mm,
teenager, and then are or later find yourself as a young single mother in particular,
mm,
the likelihood that you are going to live below the poverty line for the rest of your life is astronomical.
right.
And the fact that, and it's also in statistics shown that you're more likely to use drugs and alcohol. You're more
Mm,
likely to get into abusive relationships, like that just, and I said no.
yeah.
That's not going to be for, I am not going to be one of those statistics. I'm not.
Yeah.
There's no reason that I have a family who is able and willing to support me. I am
Love that.
smart. I am energetic. I am dedicated. I am committed. I refuse for that to be my story. And I refuse for that to be the story of my son. I
It really,
refuse. I will
yeah,
not
it
let it
really
happen.
sounds like that period of your life was where it really kicked in, this self-worth thing kicked in, that you, and it was again around your son, that, it was around your son where you said, okay, well, I'm leaving, and around your son that was like, okay, I'm going to stop this behavior, as much as your dad was sitting on you at the time, or that's the mental image I'm going to have forever now.
Yeah, do it, pinning me down.
And then similar sort of thing. So it sounds like that your son, I mean, you had a good foundation from your parents as good example, but it sounds like it was around that gave you a greater purpose to say, hey, my life is worth more. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And I think I had I know I had a really wonderful foundation from my family. And I had a really visceral, immediate example of the other side of that too, from my son's father's family.
Yeah.
Lots of pain and abuse and suffering and matching up with the statistics on that side. And I had my son who's in the middle. And I just felt so that it was my job. If he was going to succeed, which example did I want to be in the forefront?
Yeah.
And it was the foundation, right? So it really, I had like, sometimes I tell them, a lot of my girlfriends are just having kids now, and they, me being a grandmother of 2, which I am at this point, they ask me about like all this parenting wisdom because I've done it before. And first I say, I don't know that I have the wisdom, because like, let's be real, no parents know what the hell they're doing. They're just doing the best they can given the examples they've had and how they feel.
Yeah.
But really, I said, I think our job as parents is to, 1, be your word, 2, be an example. So it is really not what you say, it is what you do.
Yep.
And what you say you're going to do, you damn well do, right? Because then, like,
tell you a funny story.
Those 2 things I think go together. And then we're just like bumpers on the bowling alley as parents. Like, kids are going to go the way they're going to go, but we're just there on the sides to be like, back this way a little bit, back that way a little bit. And we do that by being our word and by being an example and giving them unconditional love.
Yeah.
No matter what my son did, I always loved him. And I would say, I love you more than anything. And this behavior has these consequences.
Yeah.
They were never my love, unkind words, like never, never, never was love and meanness, like love and kindness were always there. But the Nintendo 64 got taken, the PlayStation got taken. Oh, the weekend with your aunt in New York. Yeah, that's not happening anymore because you got an F. I love you. And I'm so excited that we get to spend these next 2 weeks together. And I know you're disappointed about going to New York, but don't get an F next time. How about that? And then you can go to New York. And I also tried to say it like you guys can see my face with that look on my face. And sometimes my son would just like ask me the same question over and over, try to like, can I please go? Can I please go? Please, please, please. Can I please go? Can I please go? And finally, when I would just sing him this song, the answer to your question is no. You spell it with an N and a no. And when I would sing it like that, he knew that if he asked me one more time, like the lid was going to blow off the roof. Because like I was my word, right?
Yeah.
I said no.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love that about, because I mean, I've had that same approach with children, I don't give a reason. If it's the decision, if it's no, it's no. Why? Because I said so. That's all you need to know. I don't have to justify it. I'm the parent.
I agree with that, and I disagree with that.
Yeah.
So I agree with it that like, and the reason I say that is because, again, going back to being raised Mormon,
Mm.
you don't have sex before marriage.
Yeah.
Why? Because I say so. But why?
Yeah,
Because
that's
God says so. Okay, well,
because you
but
could get
has God
pregnant.
made out because like, does he know how good it feels? I mean, like, what is happening, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with you. And I tried when I said no to my son to explain to him why I said no.
Yeah.
Not with like all the details, because a
Mm.
13-year-old, at 10, 11, 9, whatever, they don't need all the details, but I gave him the details
Mm.
that made him understand, like, I would love to send you to space camp. It's not in our budget right now.
Yeah. No,
No,
those
you can't
circumstances make
go,
sense completely.
like, yeah, no, you can't go to the movie. Why? Because we have this and this happening tomorrow,
Mm.
that kind of a thing. Because you're really, as a kid, for me, I hated being told no and the answer being why, because I said so.
Yeah.
And so I just did it different.
Yeah. No, I get
My
what you're
parents
saying.
were like, no, sorry.
Yeah, no, so I get what you're saying there because I mean, from with my son, I always explained a lot of things, but it was more about saying, no, when we get into the debates about, and they're coming up with all these different reasons as to why, it's like, no, I'm shutting this down now.
Yeah.
It's no. I'm not going
Yeah.
to explain anymore. I don't need to explain anymore. The answer is no. And also, I mean, I guess probably because I'm quite tall and I've learned, you lower the octane, the octave of your voice a little bit. You have that big place, no, and it's like, okay, I better walk away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to have it.
Yes.
But I think I completely agree with you because that's one of the things with my son. I had a lot of success in that regard. Was I remember one of the early on during his school, I just noticed that there wasn't that interest. Just
Mhm.
wasn't really, it just seemed to, and I thought, I wonder, does he realize why he's going to school? So I asked, I
Mm.
said, do you know why you're going to school? And he goes, no. And I went, okay. So I talked him through. I said, you see what I do and earn money and provide for us. And I talked him through this process. And I said, and that's the reason I can do that is, I've got an education. Now my education path wasn't, straight from school to university, but I've got an education that provides that. That's what school does for you. It gives you an education to be able to provide, for yourself and look after yourself because I will kick you out of this house one day. You're not going to be living here forever. and and
Yeah.
um and and from that moment, I noticed there was a very big difference in how he approached
Mm.
the school because he understood the purpose of going. And we had that
Yeah.
conversation. So it was always about explaining it. But yeah, there was a line where I got to where, with it was not so much my son because I didn't really get those kind of things. He generally did what I
Mm.
asked him to do.
Your
But it was
daughter.
every now and then when we had what's that?
It was a daughter? Or do you
No,
only have
no, it
one?
was other friends. I've only got one
Oh,
son. So
yeah.
technically, I'm not a real parent because if something went wrong in the house, I knew who did it. So, but
Yeah.
the I had friends. His friends would come around and then they would be, not behaving so
Mm.
much and be like, I'm not having that debate with you. It's no.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It's funny. That's funny that you say that because I remember my son's friends coming around, and I never had to have those debates with them
yeah.
because they would ask me to do something, and I would say no, 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 that can't happen because of X, Y, Z, and they would all be, oh, okay. And I get the sense that perhaps they came from households that were just like, no, because I said so, and there was no like debate or
Okay.
explanation or whatever.
Yeah.
Also, all of his friends were Mormon, but we weren't, and so like our house, and they all had siblings, and my son doesn't. He's the only one, and like our house was where all the kids hung out, and I just absolutely loved it. And I loved sitting and talking with his friends because I think I was the one parent that just would like any question
You're
ask,
the
let's
cool
talk about
parent.
it.
You're the cool parent that everyone goes to.
Well, I mean, maybe I was the cool parent. I don't know. But I was definitely the parent, I think, that treated them like adults and with
Mm,
respect and with honesty, which I don't know that I think a lot of parents think they do that.
Mm.
But I know from my experience growing up in a religious community that
Mm.
there are certain questions that are off limits, and there are certain things that parents don't talk to their kids about, which I didn't understand. So here, I mean, I did understand
Mm.
because that same behavior is partly what led me to getting pregnant at 17. So now
Yeah.
when my son and his friends are 15, 16, 17 coming to my house,
Mm.
and they're starting, and girls are starting to come over, and I know that they're teaching abstinence in school, and that most of these kids, their parents are Mormon and stuff, you know, I'm like, hey, dudes, let's have a talk here. You
Mm.
know, it's like, sex is nice, and there's a lot of consequences, one of which being that you become a dad forever, but other consequences are like sexual diseases that you have for the rest of your life, that now, like, there's a whole lot, and
Some of those
it's
kill you
big on
now.
our hearts. Yeah, some of it, yeah. And like there's a lot of emotional responsibility that comes
Mm.
along with it, because like it just spires off all of these addictive, nearly, you know, and chemicals in our brains, and like there's a lot that happens that at 15
You don't
probably
know what you're
not
dealing
ready
with.
for.
Yeah, I mean, I love that
Yeah.
too because I'm similar in a way. There's a lot of things my parents probably didn't get right, but being able to talk about things was something definitely that they certainly with my mum and you know, learning about life and things like that from a very early age. That's probably why I was never into porn or anything like that when I was because I
Mhm.
knew what sex was when I was like in you know before I was 10. My mum
Yeah.
had this book and she showed us, you know, this is how babies are made and stuff like that. And so when my friends were talking about it, I was like, yeah, whatever, it's just sex. What's the excitement? Um,
Uh,
and you know, it's so it
yeah.
wasn't like this big thing you rush off and do that. And that sort of translated because you mentioned about, and I never thought about it that way of treating your child as though they're adult. But I think I think I've done that pretty well because it's always
Mhm.
been with my son. It's never been demanding of him to do that. Similar with school, for example.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was initially behind, and not
Mhm.
through anything to do with his own fault because of things that were happening in the family. And he had two older half sisters that you know there was a lot of focus on them as well, and so
Mhm.
so he didn't get the attention early on, and as a result,
Mhm.
his academic was behind,
Mhm.
and worked with you know him to bring that up, and then we're talking about it, and I said, okay, well, what do you want? What result do you want to get in school? We've talked about why you're at school. What
Mhm.
result do you? And this was a few years after we had that initial conversation, and he set a grade that he wanted to get. You know, and he was getting some assistance with English and maths. He wanted to get out of those classes, and he had a grade. It wasn't the highest grade, you know,
Mhm.
and I didn't say as much as I was thinking make it higher. It was like I didn't say anything.
Right.
It's your choice. Okay, you do that. It
Yeah.
was still a high grade,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you know put it to him, and so from then it was a case of asking him, okay, what's your goal for your academics, um,
Mhm.
and he go this, and I say, have you done you know the study to move towards that? And sometimes you go, no, I haven't. And so, well, should you be doing that? So I'd be asking him the questions, as opposed to telling him you must study. And they go, yeah, I
Right.
probably should. And off you go and you do the study. But it became a thing where most of the time I asked him, have you done that? He'd done it, and I would see it because partly too, we've got you know, desks set up. He doesn't have a desk or TV in his room. It's in the lounge room. So
Right.
we and my desk when I was working from home on COVID was near his as well, so we could see what's going on. So I can see whether he was studying or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, not only did he achieve the goal, he actually blew past it and started getting A's and A pluses. Anyway,
Awesome.
so and that was where
Yeah.
you know I like what I'd never thought about it from the perspective as you're saying about someone you know treating your children as though they're adults. But I think that's partly the attitude of, and I've always said to him, I said, if you screw up your life, that's your problem. I've given you every opportunity. If you mess it up, I haven't told you what to do. You can maybe go to a shrink and then say, well, my dad didn't tell me what to do. That's why my life is messed up. But I'm not going to care.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but I think what you're saying there's really there's two parts that stand out for me. Is one, you had a great example to draw from, which is I think is really
Mhm.
helpful. Whether it's you grew
Mhm.
up with that or whether you've chosen it from somewhere else is having that great example. But also two,
Mhm.
treating people, whether they're children or not, like adults,
Mhm.
and giving them the respect because that's something I've always tried to do with my son is give him the respect to choose. We laughed when the movie June came out. We were watching that, and there's a scene in the movie. I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but there's a scene in the movie where the father and son are talking, and they're talking about whether the son's going to take over the role as the king of the kingdom or whatever it was. And the son's talking about whether, he's not sure whether he wants to do it or whatever. And the father turns to the son and says, "Look, all you need to know is that you are already everything you have to be for me. You're my son. That's all you need to be." And we laughed because I'd been telling him that for ages. It's like, I do whatever you want to do. I'll always love you. You're my son. That's all you need to be. I mean, if you break laws, I'm not going to bail you out. You're going to have to suffer through that. But, and I'll still love you. But it's like that might not be a great behavior. But I'm wondering, because we're talking about this self-worth thing, and it sounds like very early there from that time with your son, you've actually started to, that's where that was. We mentioned that before, but it sounds like it really hit home from that side of things. And did that help? Like, you got married again and then got divorced. What was that process like compared to the first time? Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, so the second time, it was about 10 or 11 years after my first divorce that I got, that I started dating what then became my second husband. And it's funny because when I think on our very first date, I said to him, "Look, I'm not interested in getting married again. I've done that. And I have my son. I'm not having more kids. My son's 13. I'm not having more. I don't see the point of marriage. I want to be in a committed thing and we can live together and do all of that. But like actually getting married, I don't like, why? Yeah. Furthermore, I don't need you to take care of me. I am doing just fine all by myself. What I want, what I'm looking for is someone to share life with.
Yeah.
But I don't need it. Right? Like this whole, nice. You complete me. That's lovely. But that's also like, I complete me.
Yeah.
And you're awesome to be with.
Yeah.
But like, if you go, am I less? Is there a piece of me now missing? A piece of my heart might be smashed for a little bit, but that can repair, right? But so I was, like right at, and I think he was a little taken aback, and maybe that was when he was like, "Damn, I love her," because I was.
Was that the first date? You said all that?
I was on our first date because because at this point was and am so confident in just like who I am and what I have to offer in the life that I had built for myself and my son, that I was like, I don't have time for this drama and this bullshit. I don't need to play games. Why? What for? Nothing. I don't need that. So I'm going to just put it out here right now what this is. And if that is bothersome to you, then we are not compatible. And let's just figure that out right now, at least on this front.
Yeah. Love that.
Like, let's just, and it always blows my mind.
You're playing hard to get, you're playing hard to want. So.
Totally. I am playing hard to want. Exactly. Yeah. But it always blows my mind when I have clients who are particularly young and single, but even just maybe single for the first time in their 40s, like the dating game. I had a client who all she wants is to get married and have a kid. And then every time I was hearing how she'd go on like 3, 4, 5 dates, and she would never bring up the kid question until like on the 4th or 5th date, maybe even months into dating this person. Yeah. He would say, "Yeah, I'm not interested in having kids," or "I've had a vasectomy," or something. And it would crush her. And I'd be like, why? If that is something that is so important to you, why are you not putting that in your profile? Like, right is like in the first sentence. "Oh, well, what?" And I'm like, what? Then you won't date someone who's had a vasectomy won't take you out on a date. You don't want them anyway. Like, what is this game? Why are you wasting your time?
And you don't have to say it in a mean way either. I mean, you don't have to be really confrontational about it. Just say, "Look, this is what I'm looking for."
Yeah. I mean, on the first date, what do you talk about? "Oh, where are you from? What are you looking for?" You're just all that stuff anyway. So you're like, "Yeah, I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. And I'm really looking for a committed relationship and children. That's what I'm looking for." Like, second sentence in.
It's exactly, it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah. And then if he's like, well, that's not what I want, you can be like, great. So should we just like appetizers and then call it good? Or do you
Exactly. Yep.
still want to have a fun, do you still want to have a fun evening and go
Yeah,
bowling? Because we can do that too, you know? But
exactly.
anyways,
Yeah. So you
yeah,
had
so
that first conversation, and
yeah,
he's still
with
keen.
the second, and he still came. So we ended up being married for about 9 years.
Hmm.
And it was really great. He was
What was the
exactly,
transition? Because you said you weren't going to get married, but then you did
I
end up
know.
getting.
We
What was
ended up,
that?
but yeah, I did. So let's see, we dated for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years before we got married. And
Hmm.
in that 2 year time period, we lived together. His daughter came and lived with us. So now there was the four of us. We ended up buying a house.
Hmm.
Um, so I was committed.
Hmm.
So we were in it, you know, like I was committed. We were doing this thing, but like, did I actually need the piece of paper? No, I didn't. But
Yeah.
he, so I wasn't feeling like, oh, we need to do that thing for this to be more than it is. For me, it was fine, but he did. And so on my birthday, um, he proposed to me and said, I want you to, and he had already been divorced once too.
Yeah.
Um, and he was just like, I know that we talked about this, but like, I want this. I want to call you my wife. I don't want to say this is my girlfriend, my partner. Like that's what I
Hmm.
want. And we were at a place where it didn't seem weird and scary. And so I was like, okay, let's do that then.
Yeah. Okay.
It just felt like
Hmm.
not pressure, like something we had to do, something we were supposed to do. It felt like something he wanted to do,
Yeah.
and I was not, and it was something I was willing to give him.
Yeah. Okay. And then you've
So
gone through
that's,
the,
yeah,
and then because I want to touch on the self worth thing again.
yeah,
Stay with that. Is then you've gone
yeah.
through and you've got divorced again. So how was that different from a self worth thing from the first time you got divorced?
I think they both had to do with self worth,
Mm.
but different sides of
Yeah,
it,
that's
right?
what I
So
see.
in the
What's the difference?
first divorce, it was like I'm worth more than this.
Hmm.
And my son is worth more than this, and we both deserve more than this.
Yeah.
So this, I'm not going to take this abuse, and like I want more for us side
Hmm.
of the self-worth. And I suppose the divorce number two was also, I want more than this, but not that because it was abusive in any
Mm.
way. It was because I was going in a different direction in terms of self exploration, in terms of um, wanting a little more variety, wanting like just in all aspects of life.
Mm.
My husband at the time was 100% perfectly content to stay in his mid-level job in our house with our friend group doing the same routine day after day. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
I'm a seeker. So I'm like, I'm always trying to expand and to grow and to learn new things and try new things and do new things. And I just kept feeling like I was being like anchored back to this
Right.
thing. My son was grown and out of the house now. And now it's just him and I. His daughter was now with her mother. So it's just the two of us. And it's like things started to come to light where I was like, oh, I actually had just another child in the house, but I didn't know it because there were kids here. But now that there's no kids here and it's just the two of us, like, I'm done being mom.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
done doing the mom thing. I want to do me thing, my life thing. And I frankly don't want to drag you along with all
Yeah.
of the things. Like not interested in like growth and like healing his own wounds and looking at
Mm.
the trauma that he had experienced in his life and how is that playing out into your life today. Like no interest in it. He's just like, hey, life's good, right? And it
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah.
And it was good. But so I think this is the thing where like it's okay to want what you want. Things can
Mm.
be okay.
Yeah.
Things can be like, we were okay.
Yeah.
We weren't fighting. We were okay. I lived in a great neighborhood. I had a nice job. He had a
Mm.
nice job. We had a good friend group, but like things just felt stale and I wanted more. And I like had always desired to have this business, but like whenever I started to question and falter and be like, I'm feeling itchy and I want something different and I feel like I'm being pulled in this direction to like learn and explore this thing, he would freak out. Like it was like his whole foundation was shaking.
Okay.
If I was unstable, then like his world was falling apart. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
And we went to therapy and counseling. And in the end, it just was like, I love you. And
Mm.
this isn't working for me anymore. And I need to go.
Yeah.
I would love to say that that was the conversation and then we split ways, but that wasn't. That
No,
was the
I don't think it was.
conversation. That was the conversation in and amongst also me not being fully brave enough to have it be just that conversation. So I did end up having an affair near the end, which was sort of the drop that spilled the bucket. We had
Okay.
been having all of these issues leading up to, and we were doing
Mm.
all of these types of experimentation together
Mm.
that for me meant the door was open to do other things and it got out of control. And I ended up having an affair,
Mm.
which in the beginning I thought was totally allowed and within the rules, given what he and I had been doing to that point. But then I crossed the line and
Yeah.
that was the end.
Yeah. Okay.
But all of that stuff leading up to that openness, that experimenting, that seeing was because we had been going to counseling and like, I want more and I need, like, things need to shift. And do you want to grow? And what do you want from your life? I mean, we're only like 40. So what is it that you want? No, I'm good. Like, I don't need to do anything different than what's happening now. And I was like, well, I don't think that the next 40 years are going to like, I can't stay doing this for the next 40 years. Like I
Same
want to
token,
keep
to be
doing.
fair, too. I mean, you had a child at 17 and have been a mum ever since. And then as you say, you've then got remarried and had someone else's child in the house as well. So you really haven't done that whole, go out and explore and things like that. That's got to be, part of that factor. You haven't done that, so of course you'd want to.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't want to. So, like what usually happens is instead of just, being an adult about it, if that's, I don't even know the right words. It's not even the right words. But what's funny is that not that having an affair and going through a second divorce is easy by any means. It's not easy at all. It absolutely sucks. It's super hard.
Yeah.
But somehow having an affair and having that sort of be the reason that you get divorced and the marriage ends is easier than coming and being like I said before, I love you and this isn't working. I need to go.
Do you
Why?
think maybe that was
Because
an
I said so.
unconscious thing that it sort of was a driver to that, giving in
Totally.
that extra reason?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, now looking back, but sometimes we get caught up in what's happening and don't have a dad to sit on you to pull you up and be like, hey. I mean, my dad was still around, but he didn't know what was going on, right? Because on the outside, you're like, but he didn't know any of that. He didn't know any of that until afterwards when I had to come to him again for the second time and be like, so it's happening again, getting divorced again. Why? What? And I told him, and he was like, he said to me when I told him, hey, this is all of the things that we were doing. And it led to this. And I ended up having an affair. I remember him sitting across the table and he said, sweetheart, what you have done and what you two have done and what you have done is not okay. It's not okay behavior.
Yeah.
I love you. And I am sorry that your heart is broken right now. And that is not, that's not okay. To do that. And I was like, I know it's not okay. Look, I'm living it. I'm living that it's not okay. I'm experiencing it. I get it. And I'm sorry that I've disappointed you. And I'm sorry I've disappointed myself. I wanted to be better than that. I thought I was. I will be next time.
But it
Like, I
sounds
will
like
be.
I mean, listening to you talk about that, it sounds like you were in a very different position than where you were before from your own personal self-worth. It was
Mhm.
like, yeah, it sounds like there's a distinction there between, what you did, because you're talking more about the behaviors now as opposed to the person. Before, if, it was more about you being not worthy, but this
Mhm.
time it's like, I
Mhm.
did things that weren't okay, but you're
Yeah.
okay. That seems to
Yeah.
be the distinction, if I'm hearing
Totally.
you
And
correctly.
it was definitely the distinction this time
Mm,
versus last time. The first time, like, I didn't eat, I worked out all the time, I drank all the time, like I did all of these other, this time, like, I meditated daily, I was doing yoga, I
yeah.
talked to my friends, I saw a coach and a counselor, and I admitted to my husband, like, I know that I hurt you, and I know that this behavior was not okay, and you don't deserve it. You are a wonderful man. I have been very happy for many, many years. I have been unhappy for several, and I did not communicate to you in a way that you understood, because perhaps I didn't even fully understand. And I'm sorry.
Mm,
And yet, when we're getting divorced, you don't get to take me for everything I have because you're angry. And one
yeah.
point during our divorce, at the table, I'm sitting there, his lawyer, mine, and he was saying all these crazy things, and I, like, slammed my hand on the table just to get a break, right?
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, I am deeply sorry for the pain that I've caused you. I am.
Mm,
And no amount of money or things that I give you will heal the pain in your heart or take the guilt and sorrow away from mine for what I've done.
mm,
No amount.
mm,
If I give you everything I have, you're still going to feel the way you feel, and I'm going to feel the way I feel. So this is business, and we're going to do what's fair. And then somewhere else, we're going to fix the pain.
mm.
That is not here with money and houses and my half of my retirement and alimony. And that's not happening here."
Yeah. Wow. That's a really, I mean, you can hear from the way you're talking about that too. That's You're coming from a place of real strength inside that you had in that
Mhm.
moment. And that didn't, I don't think that came, in that meeting. You had been building that up for some time, that strength,
Mhm.
inner strength, and like for yourself going, hey, this is what's right for me, and I'm comfortable saying that. Am I
Yeah.
hearing that right?
You are hearing that right. And I think that comes from this lifetime of
Mm,
making choices,
mm,
experiencing the consequences,
mm,
feeling all of the feels, and then looking back and saying, what did I learn from that? How did I handle that? What did I make that mean about myself? How did that meaning and that belief about myself shape your behavior and your actions afterwards?
mm,
What worked, what didn't work, what worked for a while? Like, first divorce to second divorce,
mm,
that will not be my story. I will not be a statistic. I will show otherwise. That worked for a long time. I got my degree. I bought a home in my dream
mm,
neighborhood. I had a successful 6-figure job. I became a yoga instructor. I traveled all over. I had an amazing, I had and have, but I had a beautiful life. And then I get divorced for a second time, and a year and a month after that first divorce or that second divorce, I get stage 4 colon cancer, and they tell me I'm going to probably die, and I'm 41.
wow.
And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. What?
Yeah.
Right? So it was just like, that moment helped me see that, okay, this behavior of hustling and go, go, go and prove, prove, prove and do, do, do
Mm,
has served you. You've had a beautiful life. It's giving you a lot of things. But at this point,
mhm,
is that what you want to keep doing if you might die this year? And I survived it, since I'm sitting here talking to you. But when I got through all of those
mm.
chemos and radiation that you talked about in the intro, and they were like, okay, time to go live your life, I was like, I don't want to go back to all of that.
Mm.
That's not who I am anymore. That's not going to serve me anymore. And now I want to use all of the stuff that's happened in my life to help others turn their setbacks into their superpowers. I want other people to see that they are worthy of their goals and dreams, no matter what they are, that nobody has to understand them or agree with them. You get to want what you want. You're worthy of what you want. The shit that's happened in your life has, as cliche as it is, has given you the experience and the tools that you need to get the life that you want, but you've got to figure out how to use them.
Yeah.
And I quit that 6-figure job, sold my dream home in Salt Lake City, and moved to the Netherlands. And I'm married for a 3rd time here in Holland, and I love it. And I'm a grandma of 2.
So that moment where you've had, you've gone through the cancer treatments, and we talked about that in the intro. So and that's a very long process that you've gone through, and you've got, clearly you've got resilience, and that you you talk about that on your website, how you had support from your family, how you continued to look forward. So there's that resilience, and that's come through from what you're talking about there. But after you mentioned there that you got the all clear from that, and then you're still working from what you're describing there, all through this process, you're still working the 6-figure job, living that quote unquote dream life that a lot of people chase. But then after you've been told that you're in the clear, you've decided then you don't want that anymore, that you want something different. Describe that.
Yeah, I decided it before I got the all clear. I was like, if I make it through, I'm not going back to what I did before, right? So,
right, okay,
so throughout, but it was a lot of like, that's a whole the whole cancer story is a long one, and there were so many of these small little lessons of like standing up for your worth and speaking up to the doctors and not believing everything that you're told and questioning and trusting yourself. And just small little miracles and insights, much like that moment in, back in the first divorce of, this isn't what I want, it's time to go. There were so many of those little moments. So that was happening all along, that it was like, if I survive this, in the minute I get the all clear, I am going to do something with my life. I am going to follow my dreams, because up until this point, you've been playing it safe, so to speak. Like starting your own business is tough, right? So you've had this really beautiful life, and it has ticked some of your dream boxes, right? You didn't want to be the statistic. Well, okay, box checked, right? Like you're not below the poverty line, you're good, right?
Yes.
So like your list of the dreams that you had when you were 17 and thought that all your dreams had flown out of the window, you've actually made your way around to them and ticked a lot of those boxes and accomplished it. It didn't happen in the way and on the path and plan that you had in your mind, but they happened. So, and I think that was important for me to do. And cancer gave that to me, that pause to be able to look back and be like, oh shit, if my life is going to end, what have I done? Well, actually, sister, you've done a lot. You've done a lot of what you wanted to do for yourself. Okay, so now if I get more time, now what do I want to do? Because from this moment forward, it's all gifted time. Every day we wake up, it's gifted, but until you have something that happens to you like that, you don't really, that's not tangible. But until you have a doctor say to you, the surgery tomorrow, the surgery you're going to have in a month from now, I don't know if you'll survive it, so get your affairs in order. And then to sit with your 23-year-old son and do the will and your advanced health directive, and here's the money, and here's the trust, and here's the house and all the passwords and all of that. And should the surgery go wrong and I end up on life support, you and grandpa, because my son was 23, so I put my dad as well, like you two, decide these are my wishes. This is what I want for my funeral. Here's the playlist, like all of that. We did all that kind of stuff. But I just was like, man, I am here for a reason. All of these things have happened to me. I don't know if by my own doing or just shitty shit happens. It doesn't matter. They've happened. So whether it's my own doing or divine intervention or who knows, like that, it doesn't matter. They still happened.
Yeah.
So now what am I going to do with it? Because I just saw it as, well, two things really occurred to me during this time. The first was I got to this place during my like daily meditations and my daily walks and the really slowing down and savoring life because I didn't know how much I would have left.
Yeah.
I got this overwhelming feeling that in a previous life, so in the Mormon religion, they believe that our spirits lived with God in heaven before, that we come down to earth to get a human experience, and then we go back to heaven, right? Yeah. So given that sort of my foundation, I just had this overwhelming feeling that in a previous life, there or some other version of that, I asked the universe to learn some lessons. I asked God for lessons. What is love? What is forgiveness? What is compassion? What is patience? What are some of these like really nebulous terms that like you can't really describe, you can only experience to know? I asked for those lessons. Like, what is that? I want to know. I want to learn. And they said, okay, we'll teach you. And maybe they told me cancer will be the thing. This is what you'll go through. And in that sort of land of eternity, I was like, 18 months in eternity, that's not a big deal. Fine. Yeah, sure. Sign me up. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Then we get here and we forget that experience of ourselves. That's it's really and truly how I felt. It's how I still feel. But in the moment I felt that way. So then because that was like, I got that feeling during a meditation, for the rest of it, it was just like, breathe. It's going to be okay. Like, whatever happens.
Yeah.
Whether I make it or I don't, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And it really helped me go through that with a sense of calm, and if I can maybe even be so bold to say like purpose, to just be in the moment, to just be in what was happening, and not be in the, oh, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda, or in the, oh God, I hope I get to, but just like, what's here right now. And that was a really incredible, magical experience. And I feel like I've learned the lessons. We'll see what happens in the rest of life if there's another event coming my way. I don't know. I don't feel like it. You know, when you go through cancer and then you have your 5-year checkups and all of that, every time one would approach, someone would ask, are you nervous? And you know what? No, I'm not. Cause I don't think it's coming back. I think I'm done. Like I did the thing. Like I fulfilled my commitment. I asked for it. They said, this is what you'll have to do. I said, okay. And I made it through. So I think, I'm not nervous.
Do you think that was in that awake, because you made that comment, I'll write this down, I'm going to do something with my life. Do you think that was that transition where you went, because there was two things that stood up. You're going to stand up for your worth, and I'm going to do something with my life. That they were two defining, sounds like two defining moments, or to take, not giving it justice, but I'm going to use, English is my second language and I don't have a first one. So
me too.
Is that, was that seems to be very insightful and maybe divine intervention that gave you those, but does it feel, because that's where it sounds like where you're when we move into your coaching part of your life, is that where that started? Was that intervention, those defining moments?
I think so, yeah. And I think those defining moments, I'm going to stand up for my worth. I'm going to do something for my life, with my life. It was like, oh, everything that I've been through have sort of been leading me here and giving me the life experience and the tools. And like I've been in the trenches.
Mm.
I've been in the trenches, and now now it feels like my mission to help other people see how to use their life experiences to fight for their own worth and their own happiness and their joy, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. And for some of my clients, I just want to be a less stressed mom. For others of my clients, it's I want to build a business. I want to build a gluten-free pasta business that changes the world, that is sustainable for the planet and better for health, right? I have everyone in between. And the life experiences that you've had, the things that happen to you, the small little day-to-day interactions, like going back to the mom who just wants to be less stressed around her kids.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, what are you trying to live up to? Like, let's look at where you're spending the time. What are the things, like, it's okay if the socks don't match. And you don't need to press your own juice every morning. And if you feed your kids chicken nuggets once a week, that's fine.
Yes.
Right? Like, what are the things that are important, right? But on the flip side, I've got moms that are like, I feed my kids chicken nuggets every night and the socks never match and I feel it. And so then it's like, okay, well, what are you making that mean about who you are as a mom? And, what's important to you and why is that important to you? And I think, I just truly feel like everything that's happened in my life so far, if I didn't do this with my life, then what was that all for? Why did I have to experience all of that?
Yeah.
If I was just gonna not use it in some way to help someone else.
Yeah. Beautiful. Do you want to tell us a bit about because you're a resilience coach now? You describe yourself as a resilience coach. Your tag is Zero Fucks Given Manifesto, and I love that. I mean, and for I'm going to I'll record the intro later after we do this, but I'll give a warning that there is some fucking happening in this, or the use of the word.
Yes.
But from that perspective, and I love the fact that you just have that attitude of do what's right for you. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Take us through what you do now as a resilience coach. If describe that the business that you run and the services that you offer.
Yeah. So at the moment, I do one-on-one or small group coaching, and we really we spend a lot of time talking about, okay, what are the frustrations and the challenges that you're experiencing in your life right now, and then really try to how do you want it to look, and then what are the things that have been happening in your life that have led to this uncomfortable, challenging spot that you're in, and how can we change that perspective? How can we use this part of innately who you are that is worthy, and there's nothing broken about you, but maybe we're just using this tool we can use this tool in a different way to get you the results that you want. And what I find often is that people come in with like some very specific hurdles or challenges that they want to resolve, and in the process of doing that, we uncover a whole lot more, which is like really getting to the core of what are my values, what is it that I stand for, and where in my life am I not in alignment with those. And I find that when my clients can get really clear on what their values are, 1 to 3 values that are just like to their core, we describe them, we name them, you know what they are, you know what it looks like when you're in it, you know what it looks like when you're not. Then going back to those bumpers on the bowling alley, then and it's not that shitty shit still doesn't happen. It just like, it dents you a little bit. And then you just pop that and you go like, oh, that's because I wasn't in my integrity in that. And it also helps like hold your boundaries, right? Because if like one of my core values is integrity, then I'm going to say to my husband, I love you and this just isn't working. So we need to go to counseling, or I need to be done. You don't then just go and have an fair because you don't have, you don't know. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we do, is one-on-one coaching and small group coaching. The small group is great because you just feel like part of the community, and that you're not alone, and that you're not the only one who's feeding your kid chicken nuggets every night, or you're not the only one who's doing fresh pressed juice in the morning, whichever end of the spectrum you fall as a parent. Like, you're not alone. And there are other people who are going through something similar, and it's a really wonderful community of support, that because not everyone has the foundation and the background that I had. I feel very lucky to have that. And so I try to provide that for clients with the small groups, that foundation, that support group, that community you can fall back on.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do, the coaching. And my Zero Fucks Given manifesto are really just 7 mantras to help you design a life you love without giving a shit about what anyone else thinks. And I've said several of them throughout our chat today, but things like shitty shit happens and it's got nothing to do with you. I mean, I have them on my mirror, and I look at them every day, and it does guide me into
do you want to quickly run through the 7 mantras, or do you keep them secret? Yeah.
No, I don't keep them
secret. Shitty shit happens. I like that. Shitty shit happens.
Yeah, shitty shit happens, and it's got
like
nothing
it's
to
almost
do
like you can do a takeoff. You maybe do a send up from the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang song. Yeah.
I know. I should. I'll look that up and see if I can. I still love you or something. Yeah, so that's one. Shitty shit happens and it's got nothing to do with me. It's this idea that I'm always doing my best in any given moment with the information and the resources that I have at that time. Yeah,
I love that.
The next one is just do me. So like, I'm a huge drag queen fan, and RuPaul, the queen of all drag queens, her phrase is, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else?
Yeah.
So this idea of just do me sort of is a riff on that, which is like, if I'm not happy, how in the hell can anyone else in my world be happy? So I've got to do me first to make sure that I'm happy first.
Yeah.
There's no right way to do life. There's only your way.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what's right for you.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some universal things, right? Kindness, love, those are kind of universal. But like, should you get married before you have kids? I don't know. Yeah. Should you go to college? I don't know.
Yeah.
What feels right for you, right? So that's that idea that really only you know what's best for you, and nobody needs to understand it or agree with it. Yeah. It's your life. I get to decide whether life is hard or easy. Life is just life. It's not hard or it's not easy, but it is my attitude and my mindset that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Going through cancer, I could have freaked out and absolutely dreaded every single chemo treatment. And don't get me wrong, they were not fun to do.
Yeah.
But I had a different friend sit with me every single time. And so my mindset of, instead of focusing on the chemo part that was happening, I focused on this one-on-one time with a dear friend that was going to sit with me, and we were going to play games and laugh. If I focused on that being what this time was, it made the whole chemo thing so much easier. Not great, but so much easier. Right? I deserve to love life along the way to my dreams. Our dreams are important, but we don't need to put the blinders on necessarily and just march through and then look up one day and be like, holy hell, yes, I got the 6-figure job, but my kids don't know who I am. My partner doesn't know who I am. I have no joy in existence outside of this. Like, it took me 10 years to get my college degree. That was a dream of mine to get it. And I loved my life along the way. And when I asked my son about that time when he was young, and I felt like, from my perspective, all I was doing was working and going to school, he remembers the space camp in the backyard and the camping every weekend and the going to, the national parks, and me only packing a left of one shoe and a right of another shoe for him because I packed in such a maniac way that that's what he had to wear all weekend. Like, those are the things that he remembers, which I'm like, I did my job, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to want what you want.
Yeah.
I get kind of going back to like, it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It's
Yeah.
okay to want what it is that you want. And then the last one is being imperfect is the perfect way to be. Because what the hell is perfect anyways? Having a plan is great. I had a plan. I had a plan for what my life was going to be.
Yeah.
And we never know if it's a good one until you put it into action. And nobody knows what the hell we're doing. We're all just living this life the best we can. So being imperfect is the perfect way to be.
I love that. They're wonderful mantras. No fucks manifesto, zero fucks given manifesto, I should say. Love that. Seven mantras for everyday life. Is that what it is? I've got the. There it is.
Yeah.
I've got it written here. Seven mantras for designing a life you love without caring what anybody else thinks. There it is. I knew it had it written down.
Yeah, that's right. And people can get their own copy of these by just going to my website, kareyoncoaching.com/manifesto. And you can just get it for free. You can download your own version. There's several different sizes, and you can. I joke that I made it with this idea of like, I don't know if they do this in Australia, but in the States, you get your school pictures. And when I was a kid, it was the 8x10 with like a front on and then like a side that was kind of blurry. And then you got like the two larger and then a sheet of all the tiny ones that you gave to your friends and all of that stuff. So I designed this in that way so that you could have like one big one on your mirror and then some in your wallet. You could just kind of, so that you always see them to remind yourself, because I can't tell you how many times I'm having a conversation and it's sitting right here in front of me. I mean, it literally is sitting right here. That I have it and I'm like, no, just do me. Okay, you know what? And it helps me. I say, yeah, that's not going to work in my schedule. Whereas before I used to be like, let me upheave my whole life to fit into your plans. And I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I love that. Also on your website, you've got three other things that stood out for me that guide me by, and you talk about, I don't know if you call them principles or not, that relate to that. One of them is you've got to take one day at a time, which relates to the mantra that you talked about. There was a mantra that related to that, but you want to talk about that and why that's important to take one day at a time.
Yeah, I think it's important to take one day at a time because because we never know. You never know what's coming around the corner. I mean, the day I got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, I woke up feeling fine and went to 6 a.m. yoga. Yeah. And by noon, I was like, oh, my stomach kind of is upset. By 3 o'clock, I was in the emergency room. And the next morning I woke up with staples and a colostomy bag and stage 4 colon cancer. So like, you just never know what's coming your way, what's happening. And the past is done. Yeah. So yes, you can go and apologize and ask for forgiveness and make amends, but you cannot change that situation. It is what it is. It happened how it happened, and all you can do is do better. Yeah. And I can worry like crazy about what's going to happen next week or what's going to happen March 1st when we go to move, or on the 13th and 14th when movers come here to pack up my house. But like, what can I do today to mitigate any worry I have? I can prepare the house as best I can. And then from there, that's it. Right. So when we are worried about the future or we're focused on the past, then we miss the life that we are living. Yeah. Right now is what is happening. And if I'm elsewhere, then I miss this. Yeah. Cancer really taught me that I could be worrying about all the things I had done that led to this moment that gave me cancer. I could be worrying about all the things I'm going to miss. Like if I had died, my son's whole life, I could sit and worry about that. But then I'm missing the actual life that's happening. Yeah. So the present moment. And when we stay in the present moment, life tends to not be as scary and bad and awful as we tend to think it is. Yeah. Love that. The other thing I want to go through all three. The other one you've got is you got to have fun. I know that probably sounds obvious, but how many times do we forget that? I mean, from my experience, I work in a corporate environment, and you talk about, being a kid, and sometimes I walk into a corporate environment and wonder if, have they ever been kids? Right. So I'm just wondering, I know it sounds obvious, but tell us about why it's important to have fun. Well, I think, there are serious things that happen in life, and we don't have to take life so seriously. And
Mm,
um, going kind of back to this mantra of like, life isn't hard or easy, it just is, that it's our mindset
mm,
and our attitude that make the difference. I mean, going through cancer was absolutely awful. It was hard and it was scary and it was serious,
mm,
serious, serious business.
yeah.
And being able to laugh at the absolute absurdity and unbelievableness, if that's a word, um, of what was happening was the only thing that got me through.
Yeah.
So, quick story, I did have a colostomy bag, so I did
Mm.
have a stoma. And what's super fun about those is that you have no warning nor control.
Yeah.
For everyone whose plumbing is working the way it was designed, you know if you're going to fart. Well, with a colostomy bag, you don't. You have no idea. So here I am working. I'm a sales rep for an architectural materials company. I've got 20 designers standing around a table looking at all of our material, and I'm telling them the whole thing about what's new and blah, blah, all of this. And there's a break in the conversation, and my colostomy bag farts, and it makes like a whoopee cushion sound, and my shirt puffs up because now it fills the bag with the fart. And I am mortified.
Yeah.
I'm mortified.
Mm,
All I want to do is like disappear. I just, but I smile and I say, well, I guess that's my cue to leave. I guess that's my cue to leave. What you all should know is that I am currently going through stage 4 colon cancer. I have a colostomy bag. What's fun about those is you have no warning or control. So my apologies. But I guess, it's time for me to go. And they all start laughing and like, oh my God, I can't believe you're going through that. Oh, you're so lucky you don't have to hold it all day. Oh, my husband has one and this happens to him all the time. Oh, my grandma has one. I have one and this happens to me all the time. And these were people I'd known for 15 years and I knew none of this about them.
yeah.
That one thing sort of broke the ice, that breaking the wind broke the ice. And like we made this huge connection, and I just laughed. Now I packed up my stuff and got in my car and sat down and cried for a second because I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that just happened. But then then the tears started to turn to laughter as to how everyone like connected and was so kind.
Mm,
And I took a deep breath and was like, okay, it's going to be okay. I mean, it's going to be okay.
mm.
What can you do? I can cry or I can laugh. I still farted in front of clients and my shirt puffed up. Like that happened.
Yeah.
So I can just cry and never show my face in that firm again, or I can laugh and make a joke out of it. And that's what I did. And we connected and we're still friends now. And I haven't worked in that job now for, almost 6 years.
Yeah. I love that. And the fact that you're real about what's going on, and I'm not saying that experience, but what you're saying is if you're real about a situation, you can have fun with it and recognize that people will connect with you. I
Mm-hmm.
love that as a metaphor. So for the listeners taking that away, just think about farting in front of a bunch of people, and it's okay.
And it's okay. I mean, on the bright side, it was in a bag. So, nobody had to smell it. They just heard it. So that was
Yeah,
great.
exactly. And you get your own special effects network. So yeah.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
And the third one that you've got here is you just got to start.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you want to tell us about, tell us about that. Why is that? Why do you have that on your website as the third point?
Yeah, well, it just goes back to this, the mantra that I said, which is this: being imperfect is the perfect way to be. Like, you
Mm,
just have to start. We can sit and plan and plan and plan and hope and like pack everything like to make it be perfect. I think that's usually my experience as a coach has been usually what stops people from taking the step to do something different, to make their life different, is they're afraid they're going to fail. They're afraid they're going to
mhm.
do it wrong. They're going to F it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, listen, I have effed up so many things over my life. Like I can't, you've got this whole podcast episode to listen to all the several many ways I have effed up in my life. And yet I'm still here and I'm still trudging along. If you want to learn to play an instrument, you can study and listen and look at all of the books. But until you hit that first key and begin to practice, you'll never play the piano.
Yeah.
I'm a yoga instructor, and I can't tell you how many times I meet somebody new for the first time and I mention that I'm a yoga teacher, and then in the grocery store or the bar or wherever they are, now suddenly I'm standing alone and the person's bent over like, see, look, I can hardly touch my toes. I'm like, yeah, that's why you go to yoga. Of course you can't touch your toes. Start coming to yoga and then eventually you'll touch your toes, right? So like you just have to start. And it's helpful to have someone who's done it, who's been there along the way, to act as those like bumpers on the bowling alley to help you maybe look at a situation from a different perspective that you haven't seen before, to tell a story that maybe helps you see yours in a different way, to be behind you, to be like, try it. Let's see what happens. I'm here supporting you.
Yeah.
I don't know either. Let's do it. I'm in this with you together though. Let's try. Let's see what happens. Let's go for it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that very much. The you mentioned before your website, but do you want to tell us all the ways that people can contact you? We'll put it in the show notes, but give us your website again and any other ways people can reach out with you or get your material, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So to get your copy of the manifesto or a copy of the manifesto, it would be on my website, which is kareyoncoaching.com. You can click through on the main page to that. You can see the coaching that I offer. There's links there to book a call. So if you're curious about working with me, the first step would be to have just an introductory call, like a first date.
Yes.
Where we have a first date to see if we might be compatible. And you can find all of that information and how to do that on my website, kareyoncoaching.com. The manifesto is there as well. And then I'm most active on Instagram, to be honest. And that my Instagram profile is Karey Spransy. But the beautiful thing about the metaverse is that when you post on Instagram, it goes to Facebook as well. So while I spend my active time in Instagram, like it is their Facebook. So Karey Spransy at Facebook or Instagram, you can find me and we can interact through both of those.
Fantastic. Yes, we'll put that in the show notes. But reach out to Karey at those places: her website, Instagram, and on Facebook. Before we go, do you want to? I'd like you to leave the audience with a key takeaway or takeaways, your key wisdom, whichever one it is, many, one. What would you leave the audience with? What would be the thing that you would want to leave them with that they could take away?
That you are worthy of love and happiness in your dreams, and that no matter what has happened in your life, by your own doing or otherwise, you are worthy of your goals and dreams and love and belonging. And you have what it takes to get there. You just got to start.
Beautiful. I love that. Karey Spransy, it's been such a wonderful time chatting with you. It's been so much fun. Hopefully, I'd love to chat further again in the future, because I've got a feeling there's so much more there that we can explore and talk about. I've got a strong feeling, so I'd love to have further chats with you in the future. But thank you very much for making the time to chat with us today.
It has been my absolute pleasure. It was so super fun, and I would love to chat with you anytime. Thank you so much, Damien. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.